I'm Harrison Graham. He is Chase Sr. watching Any Given Thursday by Chat Sports. Let's get into the latest on the Philadelphia 76ers. Still no James Harden, Chase. He's not going to play until after the All-Star break, but always stuff to talk about up in Philadelphia.
Yeah, no doubt. And Philadelphia Inquirer's own Keith Pompey saying that since he was traded to Philadelphia, James Harden has been a, quote, model citizen. He insisted on joining the Sixers on their road trip to Milwaukee. He was seen at shoot-around prior to that game tonight. But really, the big focus of the conversation on today's version of Philadelphia 76ers now is the fact that Daryl Morey was on the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast with Spike Eskin as well as Mike Levin, and he had a pretty interesting tidbit and hinted at a future roster move looming via the buyout market. As we know, Philadelphia really needs a backup center behind Joel Embiid and maybe a scorer to come in off that second unit to help spell what you miss when the starters go out of the game. Here's what Morey had to say on that roster addition. Of course, he's feeling good about himself because he played his cards right by trading away Ben Simmons for James Harden, waiting until the last minute to do so, getting that leverage on Sean Marks. But on the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast, he said this is the team right now. I think we'll have one buyout. I think we're pretty close. I'm actually annoyed we can't announce that next corresponding move yet. Buyout imminent. And as he always does, he's very, very lively with the media. He said, there is your headline right there, buyout imminent. So later on today's show, we're going to take a look at some of the top NBA buyout candidates for the Philadelphia 76ers, but they need a backup big. Morey was asked really in the pecking order of the needs on this team, what do you need the most? He did talk about Joel Embiid's second team center because Andre Drummond was sent to the Brooklyn Nets in that trade for Ben Simmons, and he also alluded, or for James Harden, but he also alluded to what's kind of out there as well. Kind of weak at the wing spot for some of those available buyout candidates, and they don't really need a point guard now that they have Tyrese Maxey in addition to James Harden, Shake Milton, and Furkan Korkmaz can run a little bit of the point as well. But over the next couple of days as we enter All-Star Weekend, looks as though Philadelphia is going to have a roster addition coming to Philadelphia in the next coming days. So speaking of those buyout candidates, which buyout candidate do you like the most for Philadelphia? Robin Lopez, DeMarcus Cousins, maybe a Moses Brown. Drop us a name or names in the comments section, and we appreciate you for supporting Philadelphia 76ers now.
Yeah, I think those are all some interesting names. Robin Lopez I would like quite a bit. I think he's similar enough to an Andre Drummond, who you lost in that trade to Brooklyn. You look at the front court right now for Philadelphia, Chase. It's an elite player and two non-elite players, to say the least. Obviously, Joel Embiid, as long as he's healthy, you're in good shape there. But you need a guy that can eat some minutes off the bench, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. And B-Ball Paul, he's been tearing it up in the G League with the Delaware Bluecoats, and I love the energy that he brings to the floor, but I want him as maybe the third center option because if you get in the thick of a playoff series, we've seen Greg Monroe back up Joel Embiid before. We've seen some of these other lackluster centers, and you get picked apart whenever Embiid leaves the floor, not just offensively but defensively as well. So while I like the energy that B-Ball Paul brings to the table, I'd like him to be more slotted into that third center role and get some DNPs here and there. As for Charles Bassey, up and down between the Sixers roster and the G League, I think he has some potential coming out of Western Kentucky, but the point here being you need a legitimate and viable backup center in a playoff series behind Joel Embiid, especially Harrison, considering his injury history.
Yeah, and we'll break down some of the buyout candidates that are out there. Let's get into our updated NBA buyout candidates, Chase. Goran Dragic has been bought out by the Spurs, so he is free to sign elsewhere. We'll see if and when he does sign. A lot of other names to keep in mind here as well.
A lot of suitors for Dragic, who is an all-star with a bunch of playoff experience. I really think he's going to help move the needle for a playoff team out there, depending on where he does sign. John Wall could get bought out, but for him, making a lot of money this year, so does he agree to that buyout? Dennis Schroeder with the Houston Rockets after getting traded there in exchange for Daniel Tice from the Boston Celtics could also be a guard who can start or come in off the bench. I really like Gary Harris. Same can't be said for DJ Augustin, but Gary Harris is a really, really good player, and I think as a three-level scorer coming in off the bench would really give you good depth if he's bought out, if he signs with another team.
Woj's team's in the mix. Is this for Dragic, as we sit as of now? Brooklyn, Chicago, Golden State, also the Clippers, Lakers, and Bucks. Now, people are like, hey, Dragic was at the Heat-Mavs game the other night. He played with the Heat forever. He's wanted to play with Luka Doncic. You never know. Maybe those teams are some dark horse possibilities. I do think he's for sure going to latch on with a contender, Chase, as we progress toward that March 1st deadline.
Yeah, and with some of those teams, Portland Trail Blazers, they trade away Norman Powell. He goes to the Clippers, but now he's out with that broken foot, so they're in need of a guard. I think that Dragic on the Lakers could really help them offensively, although Russell Westbrook last couple of games has been playing very well. Golden State, he gives you really good depth. Lonzo Ball still out. Alex Caruso turning the corner with his injury, but Dragic there seems like a solid fit as well. I think the New York Knicks should be in play for Dragic's services because they desperately need a point guard and somebody to just calm down the offense late in games.
Just don't think he's going to sign with a non-contender, and the Knicks are not contending this year. John Wall doesn't sound like there's a lot of momentum for him to agree to a buyout. Of course, he's making over $40 million, has another year on his contract worth $47 million, so we'll monitor that and see if something changes there, but I don't anticipate him agreeing to a buyout. Maybe something happens this offseason via trade or a buyout there, but I think he's just going to hang out this year.
It was great to see him come back off of a couple of injury-plagued seasons last year and play well with the Houston Rockets. Hasn't played a game at all this year after last campaign, averaging 20.5 points per game. Gives you a lot of the same athletic traits as a Russell Westbrook, sometimes breathtaking in the open floor. Not the most efficient offensive player, but a guy who can really push the tempo, push the pace, and really play make for you. I want to see good players on the floor, and John Wall's a good player. We haven't seen him on the floor this year, though.
Who is the best buyout guard that is out there? I think if John Wall became available, he's the answer. Dragic for sure currently. Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Let us know what you guys think on this one, the best NBA buyout guard on the market. Now, we got some of the best hoodies available on sale for you guys at chatsports.com/NBA hoodie. Hoodies for all 30 NBA teams, a lot of them on sale as well. Go check them out, chatsports.com/NBA hoodie, whatever your favorite team is. Some of these player team combos, too. The Ja Morant with the Grizz logo on the front, that's a clean one as well. Different style jackets. I love this Hornets
30K Oubre
as well. 30K Oubre. Could be 40K soon. Who knows? Chatsports.com/NBA hoodie. Go check them out. Whatever your favorite team is, they'll have something for you. Link will be in the comments and in the description of this video. Let's go to the wing spot, Chase. A few names to keep in mind here.
I think this is the weakest position group of the NBA buyout candidates. I frankly don't like any of these players. At one point, I was a fan of Jeremy Lamb, but this year he's been awful, as evidenced by the numbers we're about to show you. Rodney Hood just doesn't really do much for me. Kevin Knox, a bona fide first-round bust, got traded to the Atlanta Hawks in that trade for Cam Reddish. Neither of those players are playing. Thomas Satoransky gives you a little bit of size at that wing spot. Kent Bazemore, I think his best days are behind him as well. Now, Jeremy Lamb certainly has pedigree. He's been in the league for a long while. He's had a couple of good moments, a couple of good years, but this year hasn't really played all that well. 7 points per game, 2.5 boards, 37% from the field and sub 34% from distance. You take a look at a player like him, you compare him with the Kevin Knox. Do you take an opportunity and a chance and a swing at Kevin Knox, who's the younger player, but hasn't been able to show anything? I think Tom Thibodeau not playing him early in his NBA career has really impacted his confidence.
It's weird. Knox's first year and a half
wasn't bad.
Looked like a guy who would be a solid rotation player, but once Tibbs got in there, he was not a Tibbs guy. Has not been the same. Jeremy Lamb, like you mentioned, is certainly a guy who's had a couple of good years, has been a floor spacer, but you've kind of seen that a lot this year in the NBA. Guys just having down shooting years due to the new rules. Some say the new basketball. I don't know how much I buy into that at this point in the season, but I tend to agree. I think this position group is definitely among the weaker ones when you look at some of these buyout candidates. Will Kevin Knox ever work out? Will he ever turn into something? Type Y for yes, type in for no. I hope he's at least hitting the gym, right, producer Jeremy? At least work out once or twice a week. I hope he's doing that. Y for yes, in for no. Will he ever turn into something? I hope we're working out at Chat Sports. I think we're doing pretty well. We're closing in on 280,000 subscribers. We're actually less than 200 away. Hey, maybe we can get there on this video. Hit that sub button. Spread the word. Let's get to 280,000 subscribers. If you want more NBA coverage, we are the channel for you here on YouTube. We'll keep it moving here on today's buyout candidates video. Let's look at some of the bigs here. A hot name right now, Chase, is Robin Lopez.
Yeah.
I think he'll have some suitors.
No, and of the position groups here, we talked about the wings being the weakest, Harrison. I think the NBA buyout bigs, the strongest of these position groups. Yeah, you can say that Goran Dragic, John Wall are very good guards, but the depth here and the players that you can get for teams who are front court needy, I think these guys are very good options. Robin Lopez, Juan Hernan Gomez, Paul Millsap, we'll see if he hangs on with Philadelphia. Didn't play poorly in his debut in that blowout loss against the Boston Celtics. DeAndre Jordan, I just don't think he can really give you much as a center who can't do anything except hang around and hover around the basket. DeMarcus Cousins in spurts on some nights can be a pretty solid playmaker. You look at what Robin Lopez has been able to do this year, I think he's the top big who could be made available by far, averaging almost 8 points per game, high-level defense, solid rebounder, decent rim protector, shooting around 57% from the floor. He is a career around 70% free throw shooter. That number, sub 60 this year. But for a playoff team, if you're able to bring in Robin Lopez as your backup big, I'm talking about the Golden State Warriors of the world, and he can be a backup to Kevon Looney and James Wiseman. If Wiseman continues to struggle getting back onto the court, Robin Lopez could be a very, very nice player there.
I think even a team like Dallas, who needs some
Dallas,
rim protection,
Philadelphia behind Joel Embiid.
Yeah, Kristaps Porzingis. I think he could certainly help there. So I think he's a guy that's going to be able to pick from a variety of teams, assuming he does get bought out. Some other players, maybe some lesser names, but still some guys that are out there. Of course, Derek Favors, Enes Kanter, Freedom, of course, who got traded by Boston, then bought out by Houston. He's available. Gorgie Dieng, Moses Brown, who got waived by the Mavericks. Drew Eubanks is out there. A little lesser name here, but a guy like Derek Favors, Chase, he's not having the year this year, but he's had years in his career where he's averaged basically double-doubles. I think he could definitely be a backup big. And I think a team like Utah, who's very familiar with him, would certainly be interested in bringing him on board.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, he's playing for the Oklahoma City Thunder now, but at 30 years old, it's pretty crazy to think that this guy was drafted number 3 overall back in 2010 and never really lived up to those lofty expectations from when he was drafted out of Georgia Tech. A lot of people expected him to be one of the best bigs in the NBA. Instead of that, he's been steady, he's been consistent, he's been somewhat serviceable. There's a youth movement in OKC, and that's why his numbers are down. Still getting around 17 minutes per game, 5 points per 5 rebounds, shooting around 52% from the floor. He's not going to stretch his game out to the three-point arc, but if you want a rebounder, if you want an energetic presence, if you want a veteran who a lot of people respect and a pretty solid defender, Derek Favors can bring that to the floor.
So who is the buyout big that's the most talented? Who do you like the most? Let us know. I think it's Lopez because he's an instant credible defender.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, 15 minutes off the bench for a contender, I think, similar to like a JaVale McGee in Phoenix, right? Like, just score around the rim and play defense. Like, that's all you really need out of him. Let us know who is the best big on the buyout market.